Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator. And on this week's Field Friday segment, I'm going to kind of do my annual Have You Checked Your Stocks episode. The last number of years, and it seems like every year, we have some concerns about some of the stock quality and how things are panning out in the field. But if you think about the year we've been through, if we start early on, we planted either earlier in April, the soils were kind of cool and damp because we sat for a 3 weeks with too damp of soils and rains. That corn just kind of got a slow start. Or when we got going again in May, we were planting into probably some pretty wet soils. All those things kind of could manifest the beginnings of some crown rot in that plant. Crown rot a lot of times doesn't manifest itself until later in the season when it runs into some late season stress, but that's when it started. We had that going on. That's not anything new. We have that a lot of years. Then we got to June, and of course we all know how June went. We probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 inches of rain in that month, depending on where you're at. We really saturated that soil. Especially in the heavier ground, you know what happens when you have saturated soil. You don't get very good root development. So we have a shallower root system, and then all that water's got to do something with our nitrogen, very likely. We either had that denitrification where it was sitting saturated and kind of volatilized into the atmosphere, or it leached away. We had some of both going on, so that took a lot of nitrogen away and gave us a shallower root system likely. So then we ended up with our nitrogen needs coming on. We were short in a lot of fields, so that stressed the plants. And then late season, something we haven't had disease-wise for a long time. We've talked about it in an earlier episode, but we had a lot of southern rust come in. I've got some pictures. You've seen them in earlier episodes, but you can see how much disruption they do to the photosynthetic, area of the leaf. You can see how much disease tissue there is. And some of those plants that have a lot of diseased tissue, they don't have as good a photosynthetic capacity anymore because the leaf is disrupted. Any disease that gets a brown area on the leaf is basically alleviating that plant's ability to photosynthesize as efficiently as it wants. But when it comes in as hard and as intense as it did in some of these fields, that stressed the plant to the point where we have some of these things going on where, we've all done it this last few weeks. You drive around the country and I can't, we've seen it before on a rare occasion, but as fast as this corn has gone from green and really healthy looking from the road to brown, and if it isn't there yet, it's getting there fast. All those things are happening. We've got fields that have this crown rot shutting down plants. We always kind of call them that ghosted plant, where they just shut down and die, didn't get done finishing the grain, the stalk gets really weak. We cannibalize nitrogen pretty high on these plants pretty early, so we're sucking the nutrients out of those stalks, which decreases its health. And here we are. We have some serious risk. This is probably a more advanced field than most. This is an early hybrid, but this was planted in May. This wasn't like this was planted really early, but a lot of fields are going to start to look like this in the next few weeks. The later corn's going to take a little longer to get there, but I have a lot of fear of what our stock quality is going to do, and more so than most because of our end of the season disease pressure we got to shut this canopy down. The fungicide fields are definitely healthier. They definitely have more plant health and less leaf disease, but a lot of this disease has come in pretty late and they're not going to be bulletproof. They're going to help some, but they're not going to be able to hold off as much as we've had blow in here out of the south, and that's given us some more problems. I think the indicators are from the silage guys. One of the things we've been hearing a lot of is we have a lot less tonnage and the silage is drier than the grain says it should be. That also is an indicator to me that we look at these stalks. I've got one cut with some disease here that you can see it's kind of hollowed out and basically there's no juice left in it. But I think a lot of this cannibalization of that stalk is why the stalk moisture is drier than the grain says it should be. That's just the silage guys that have been out in the fields. The fields that haven't been chopped, they have the same problem. They just haven't been taken out yet. And I have a lot of fear that we always seem to get a bunch of those heavy windy days in October that we don't want, where we got to drag the disc around when it's dry because we're worried about a fire getting away from us. We're there again. And I think, we keep ramming forward and get these beans taken out. I would strongly suggest taking a look at your corn, and I know nobody wants to spend the money to dry corn this year, but we got to at least look at your fields I say this every year, but go look at your fields. If you're comfortable with walking out in your field and seeing what's out there and leaving it stand for another couple weeks, that's great. But at least make an educated decision, because I'm afraid this stuff is going to have a problem if we leave it out in the field a long time. The good thing is we've had a lot of warm weather that has helped us dry out everything a lot faster than we were going to earlier. I had a lot of heat unit estimations that said we were going to black layer quite a bit later, but our heat unit accumulation here late has been really heavy, and that sped things up. That's why we have this canopy going away fast. But I think when you pull a combine out in the corn, it's going to be drier than you think. So that's to our benefit, but don't wait till it's 16% in the field. I think you're going to lose a lot of yield doing that. But just wanted to make you aware of what we're seeing. Things are changing really fast. You probably are aware of that, but I wanted to go into some of the details. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.